afternoon, everyone. My name is Stevie Rockwell, and I'm a member of the Web 2013 Planning Committee. You are in the session entitled Play the Election, and this is Kris Rockwell. He is the CEO of ImpactGames, and he also is one badass mofo, which is how he had asked to be introduced. So just a few reminders before we begin. Can you turn off your cell phones or set them to vibrate? And then please don't forget to fill out the evaluation that's linked from the web conference site. This session code is T3. So you can use that to identify the session when you evaluate it. That's pretty much it, and I'll give it to Kris.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Stevie, for having me here. I'm happy to be here, and also happy to be on the interwebs, which is exciting. My son is watching, my 4-year-old son named Hunter, which is cool because we were talking about server load balancing in HTML5 the other day. And I said, you should probably just watch the talk. So hi, HK, be good for your mom, and learn something today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about ImpactGames, and that will hopefully put some context into why we did this project. ImpactGames is a small independent game company located in lovely Pittsburgh, PA, which is a really great place to be. The weather is normally just like this, cloudy and rainy. But we're really happy to be there because we have a lot of technology in the area, and ImpactGames itself was actually a spin-off from the Carnegie Mellon University ETC group. I happen to have another company that acquired all the IP for ImpactGames, and I was also fortunate enough to get to work with Eric Brown, who was one of the original founders of ImpactGames. The focus of ImpactGames is to build video games for social issues. So we have two outstanding games that we're known for. The first game is called Peacemaker. Peacemaker is a PC-based game that is about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It won, I don't even know how many awards for what it did, but it's a game for change game. The second platform we have is called Play the News. Play the News is what Play the Election was founded, built upon. Play the News is a web-based system that allows for the rapid development and deployment of short-form interactive games based around news events. So when a news event occurs, we create a game about it that shows both sides of the story with advisors and history behind it, and the users go through and play the game. And the game happens in real time, so we keep updating the game as the news stories progress. So it turns into a series of mini-games about a larger game. There's a large community surrounding that, and Play the News was won the 2009 Knight Foundation game for news games, and it was the first game to do so. So about a year ago, we were approached by Rand McNally, and Rand McNally was looking to build a game around the election, and as it so happened, we had a platform that we could do that with, and just about a year and a half earlier, I was talking with my folks about the possibility of using Play the News as a foundation for the midterm elections, and so we reserved the playthenews.com, and so when Rand McNally approached us, it seemed to work out fairly well. So my apologies for the text-heavy slide. I don't normally do this, but in order to really explain how Play the News worked and what it did, I did have to rely on a lot of text and graphics for this, so please accept my apologies for that. It's not normally the way that I present. I normally present with very few slides, but this makes more sense with a lot of slides. So Rand McNally had approached us, and we were very excited about it because it was right up our alley. Obviously, we had a tool that we wanted to use for education, and the plan was very simple. We're going to build this web tool. We're going to make it very accessible, very interactive, and we're going to make it available free to high schools across the country. So we were very happy to have that opportunity and do that. So we started working on our platform, and my intention here today is to talk to you about the work we did, to show you what Play the Election looked like, how it functioned, and sadly, it is no longer live. We do have a copy of it hidden somewhere on our website, so well hidden that I don't even really know where it is, so I couldn't point you to it if you wanted to see it. But the actual live sites, because of the nature of the game, which was focused on the election, was actually turned off, I think, in January or February, well after the election, because as you'll see, the entire game surrounded in real time how the election functioned. So the game itself was broken up into a number of components. So the first piece that we had was the electoral map that we built for the game. So this was a very simple interactive map. I'm sure people have seen these if you looked at any games that occurred. We actually got our data directly from 270 to win, so our map was updated in real time, so you could see what the polling was, how things were going for each of the candidates. You could actually even drill down to see state by state what the percentages were, who the candidate was. I was a little bummed out that we didn't have an independent candidate, because that was kind of fun to see how that would pan out. And as you can see, we also had historical elections. They're a little hard to see because they're grayed out in this image, but you could actually click on any election year back to, I think it was 1960, and see exactly what the map looked like, which was a really interesting experience in our office, because as we started building this, it was interesting to see how the United States has changed over the past 50 years in which way people are voting and how things are happening. 1984 was particularly entertaining. And I think there was one blue state that year, so it was kind of funny to see the changes. So we enabled users to really interact with this map and see how things would play out. And we made it even a little bit more effective for them by creating a you decide functionality, so they could define their own maps. They could define who they thought was going to win one state and see how it would play out in the electoral votes to win, which is pretty interesting. When we're doing that, it's very simple. You select a state, you select who you think it's going to be, Obama, Romney, or the independent other, and you can start to see how that affects which way the Electoral College is going to go. I will state at this point, as I go through this, that I'm a very fervent independent, so I really had no feeling either way, and that's how I approached it, you know, because I don't want people to jump on me for one way or another, which was actually really tricky to talk about this when we were talking about people, or talking about this and demoing it, because we were always afraid. We were like, well, when we do this demo, what happens if we say Romney wins this state? Or if, you know, we didn't want to start any arguments. Thankfully, we didn't. So it allowed you to build your own map and see what would happen. As I mentioned, there were previous elections. You know, again, this is really helping the students understand the overall picture for the past 50 years and start to understand how the electoral votes really mattered in our current voting system. Additionally, we could also play games right from the map. So the system itself, the portal, was obviously divided, as you're seeing, into several categories. So the first category, as I mentioned, is the electoral map, that people play with that and understand it. The second piece was the game piece. And these are mini election games that we built. And they're really meant to give the students the ability to deeper understand some of the issues, some of the events that occur during an election. And we built them to really be released at a certain time during the election. So if we had a mini game about a debate, that would be released before the election. And we had to do that because, frankly, if the mini game included who's going to win the debate and we released it after the debate, it'd be kind of a one-sided answer, right? So the opinion prediction elements were very large within our game. We had a total of 11 games. We had general election outcome, one general election outcome game, 7 key battleground states, so 7 of the key states that were important to the election. We had 3 debates, and then we had an option that I'm going to talk about a little bit later as we drill down into this, to allow teachers to actually build their own games. So the core of the platform that we have with Play the News is to allow people to rapidly build their own games using nothing but web forms. It's a really simple way to do this, and it was really effective. We actually, I don't know off the top of my head how many teachers created games. I do know that there was a college in northern Florida who used this system to interact with their newspapers, to build games for their newspapers, because the games themselves can also be published on different sites. You don't actually have to keep them within the system. When we build a game, we can actually publish it as you would a YouTube video and embed it into a different site. So I do know that there was one journalism group that was doing that. And we've had a lot of interest from college in the past. In fact, the university, is it Missouri University? Yes, Mizzou, as it were, used the Play the News platform for their journalism school in building games within journalism and news. So we built 11 canned games, if you will. The games were pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You have the game here in the upper left-hand corner. Next to it are actually stories and news elements that are related to that game, and we pulled from different sources. I believe one of the groups we were trying to partner with was USA Today, so we could inject their content right into our site as a means of allowing students to really understand, get different perspectives. And then at the bottom, we see some of the statistics for the game. Who chose what in terms of groups. I mean, that was obviously, for this purpose, anonymous, but you'll see in the profiles, you can also see how you did versus your friends and so forth and so on. So a pretty simple and straightforward piece. The games are fairly simple. We start with the main title screen. It's nothing really fancy. Click to start the game. So in this case, our game is Eyes on Ohio, so it's a battleground state game. We start with the initial story. So within the system, we actually gave developers the ability to embed video content, animation content, or just simple graphics here. Of note, all the games that you see developed here were not actually developed by us internally. When we built the tool, we handed it over to developers at Rand McNally who were working hand in hand with teachers to actually develop the games. We provided guidance to make sure that it was a fairly level playing field, so it wasn't biased one way or another, and we used our expertise in having done this for a couple of years to really help them build this. But all the games in the end were built by the folks at Rand McNally with very minimal efforts to teach them. But in this particular piece, what you're getting here is the overview. If you click the More button down there in the lower left-hand corner, you'll get an expanded definition of what this game is about and why we're playing it. And then you're going to click the Let's Begin button. When you click the Let's Begin button, you're going to get background information about this particular issue. So in this case, we're talking about Ohio. You can see what the past election results were. You can, at any time, click on a question mark. And when you click on a question mark, it's going to give you data related to that field. So you can get census information, you can get information about the housing market, all issues that were important to the voters of Ohio and gave some context to what the players were looking at, the students, excuse me. Additionally, you can see at the bottom of the screen that we have a groups and leaders piece. In this case, we have the UAW, AARP, Women Vote, and one other that I can't really read. If you were to click on that, you would get more information on that particular element. That's just to give you a little bit more context about who's in play here, what they may be feeling about the election, and so forth. What becomes interesting here and is worth noting is that if I, as a game player, came here and just looked at all this and decided that I wasn't going to look at any of the information, I just saw this and said, okay, and I click Move On, you're going to get prompted that you haven't looked at all the data yet. And you can choose to ignore that and move on, or you can actually do the research and look at all the data. The idea there is that we're making an effort to get the students more involved and engaged and allow them access and kind of pushing them towards reading and understanding all of these components. So once you've read your data and you move on, you start saying, okay, what choice are we going to make? So in this case, we've got a challenge based on both outcome and reasoning. So who's the winner? We also add opinion prediction pieces. So again, these are very short form, very simple games. I mean, they're not terribly they're in depth, but they're not requiring a lot of time. The average time for this is between 4 and 6 minutes. Of interest, past metrics that we have show that while the average time is between 4 and 6 minutes, most players spend about 10 minutes playing the games. So what we're getting out of that is that the people that are playing are actually very engaged and very interested in what they're looking at and understanding more about this information. So we've got what will happen, what should happen. Those are two different things. I can say that my opinion is that an independent will win the state, but my prediction is that Obama will win the state, because they're two different things. So we like to point that out. We then get some information, again, from advisors that are giving us perspectives that perhaps we need to understand as we're making our opinion. Maybe they can help shape our opinion and give us a better understanding as to what's going to happen. We will then make our choice. And once we've made our prediction, we see exactly what the overall class prediction is. So in this case, there were 10 votes. You can see it's a 50-50 split between Romney and Obama. Interestingly, I think this is actual data from one of the classes. So we found the data that the students played with was really interesting, because I think overall in the system, if memory serves me correctly, one of the electoral maps that we can look at is an aggregate of all the classes, so we can see how everybody is voting. And I think the overall aggregate only got 2 states wrong, which I thought was pretty impressive. Who's that guy? Matt Silver, right? Yeah, Nate Silvers. Yeah, we crowdsourced that. We didn't need him. We were close. So once you've played, you get your points, you get rank points, you get experience points, and then, of course, it's pending. Your predictions were pending because, obviously, until the game is closed and the outcome has been determined, we can't tell you what your prediction is going to be. That affects the player's rank within the community, and we're going to talk about community in a minute, because that was actually a pretty big part of what we're trying to do. There were other activities that we had with reference within the site that people could engage in outside of our mini games. So we were really trying to get students, as I've mentioned, involved in the process and allow them to understand a bit more about the electoral process and through gaming, which I think is a pretty good idea. So the next part of that is the people. Now, this starts to get very interesting, and I'm certainly going to address this further when we get to the what went right, what went wrong section. The community is very interesting, because we had to be very careful when we were building the communities, because, again, this was for schools. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with this internet thing, but one of the worst things you can ever do is read the comments on a story. So you can probably start to understand why moderating the community becomes important, particularly in a school environment. And if you can't, come see me afterwards. I'll give you a couple examples. So the community was something that we took very seriously, and we actually ended up having to do a lot of work to get the community to be effective for the classrooms and respecting a lot of the privacy laws that we typically don't think of when we're trying to build applications. You know, we're talking about high school kids, so we have to be very cognizant of the privacy. You know, can't use real names, can't use photos, and we did a lot in our community to tailor it to that experience. That is a lot different than our actual Play the News platform, where you can be yourself and you can say whatever you want. And if we're playing a game about, I don't know, the IRS, no, let's pick a more current one. We're playing a game about NSA taking Verizon phone data, and, you know, Stevie posted, it's not a big deal. I have the right, because it's an open community, to post back that she's absolutely insane and it's a huge deal and we should all be really worried about it, because that's the open community. But obviously we can't do that in the school district, because God only knows what will become of that. So we built this community. The community is pretty simple. Customizable profile. It's themed to political party, favorite branch of government, and presidential profile pictures. So this is all data that we assessed and asked them to enter. And we didn't sell the data. We didn't do anything like that. It was just relevant to the game. None of the data that we have has ever gone outside of our little server, despite many attempts by various groups to take our servers down. So we have the community profiles. You can then compare your community on a state-by-state basis, and in some cases even by school, so you can see how you're doing against other schools. So really the idea was to build this to get people talking and continue them, get them more engaged. We have community data from the mini games, so we can see exactly what the outcome was, how you played, so forth and so on. And then we can see all of the different games and how the entire community played versus how you played. So you can see where the opinion prediction piece starts coming in. That also gave us leaderboards. And we did the game things, not gamification. Gamification, games, two different things. We used actual game elements here. So we've got badges, profiles, who's the most accurate predictor, combination of both. And you started to get a scoring element so you could see what your rank was in the community and globally, as it were. Because as it turns out, while we built this tailored towards US students, we had a number of international groups and schools that took this as well. You can see your full profile. This is exactly what the profile page would look like. You can compare any of your data with other data. You can see how your opinions and predictions played out. You can see here, it's a little difficult to see in this image, but there are yays and nays. So people who agreed with your comments, if you had any, could say yay, or if they didn't, they could say nay, and you could get that kind of input as well, output rather. So we built the communities for that, and part of that was the classroom. So this became a very interesting piece for what we're building because unlike our existing platform, we actually had to build subcategories. I mean, normally with the existing platform, it's open. There are no real smaller communities. We had to tailor this environment to be for classrooms. So if you didn't want your class to participate globally, you could keep them all, or you would tend to keep them all locally. And it also gave the teachers the ability to regulate who was in the class and who was not because they had to approve every student. When you came in, you were asked to either create a classroom or register as a student. You couldn't create a classroom if you weren't a teacher, and we had tools and mechanisms in place to ensure that that wouldn't happen, although it was fairly open. If you were an educator, you could build your own classroom, as I mentioned. Educators can customize all of their data, so location of classroom to make it easy for the students to find. The idea was that the teachers would create the classroom and then ask the students to enroll on their own, be it in class or out of class, and the teachers would then validate and acknowledge and accept. Yes?
What was the percentage of teachers that opened up their classroom to the world?
You know what, I don't have that, I don't really know what that data is. That's one metric I don't have off the top. I do know. We have an idea of how many people played it and such, so I'll cover that closer to the end. But this is where we also allowed, we can control the communities a little bit. The teacher had the ability to turn commenting on and off. So if it was a classroom that they felt might be particularly subject to negative comments, they could just turn off the comments, and then the students didn't have that opportunity. So we really tried to give as much control to the teachers as we could. So once the students find their class, they register and they're good to play. They register, they're validated, they're good to play. It's a pretty simple piece, a pretty simple tool to really allow students and teachers to control their content. Each school then got their very own portal. They got their own classroom community, they had their own branding if they wanted, and they had their own private game channel. So if the teachers opted to build their own games, they could keep it within their own channel, or they could put it out to the broader public to allow them to play. Channels are just our way of isolating different pieces of content. As I mentioned, with the comments enabled, students could yay or nay each other comments, which would hopefully foster healthy debate on some of the issues, and once again, try to promote understanding and access within the community. Game stats, again, and we thought that this was a very important piece. Game stats could be viewed for classrooms or as a global whole. This allowed teachers to then tailor their discussions within the classroom very easily, because if they were just looking at their class politics, they could really talk about that versus, say, globally, which might be a little bit different for them. Again, the You Decide map can be viewed for your community, your classroom, or globally, thereby fostering more discussion on exactly how things occurred. And finally, leaderboards, again, could be private or global, so you could see how you're performing. And again, that was just to encourage people to play the games. I mean, it's interesting when you start opening this up with competition, how many more people become engaged. I think when we start talking about gamification of items, which again is very different from a game, and we look at these elements like competition, it does seem to be interesting to note what that does to people and their participation. Not always long term, but at least short term. That certainly occurred within our game, and so we used it to good effect. So we have the community tools, and then we have the teacher tools. The teacher tools allow teachers to build their classrooms, as I've mentioned, and we can manage the classrooms as needed. Allowing them to access other resources. This was actually built to the Common Core standards. I hope I said that right. The words mixed up, but I believe that's correct. The Common Core standards for U.S. education. So we built this, again, with the existing education platform in mind, so it could be integrated quite easily into the existing class. There's a classroom manager that gave teachers the ability to control a lot of functions, everything from teacher admin, adding resources, sharing Play the Election with people, down to building their own games, managing their own games. The teachers could always update class or school information and toggle commenting at any time. So if you had it off and you wanted to turn it off, it was simple as clicking a button and moving forward. And then you had full administration tools for your students to make sure that only legitimate students were there, or if they were acting up, you could kick them off or what have you. And it prevented students from abusing the system, in theory, as long as somebody was managing it, right? I mean, it takes two parts there. We had comment moderation as well. So if they did enact commenting, you could edit, remove comments if they were offensive. So again, it was a way to allow teachers to control the discussion threads and keep them in line with exactly what the topic was, and make sure that they didn't get out of control, which I know is hard to believe could happen in a high school environment. So there was a full suite of lesson plans, everything that allowed you to integrate this into your existing class, and those were provided by Rand McNally, working with teachers that they had relationships with, to make sure that this was an easy tie-in and easy to integrate with their existing course. So we really tried to make this as easy for the teachers as possible. And then we gave them access to game creation tools. So the thought process there, and I don't think we got as much engagement with this as we would have liked. I think it's hard to really ask teachers to do more than what they're doing now, because they're already so busy, and to say, despite how simple the tools are, here's a new tool so you can do this. That's tough, you know, and I don't know that they had the time and will to do that, only because of everything else they have going on. But we did give them access to the game tools, so they could brand their own channel, make their own games. They could have their students build a game if they wanted to. Very simple. When you looked at the games, you can see that they have their own section that was for the games that they built. And we had hoped that people really would have used that. Additionally, Rand McNally provided their own tools to make it easy for teachers to access. We had a number of resources and pieces that teachers, as I mentioned, could access to augment their experience. And we could create 2 levels of administrators. And this is something that we did with the hopes of actually kind of trying to monetize this, because at the end of the day, we're really happy that we gave it away for free, but we also know that we had to pay for our developers. So we were hoping in the long run that we would monetize this. So we had the ability to create content admins and then sales admins, right? So hopefully the thought process was that if the teachers liked it, they would buy into it on some level, and then the sales admins would have the ability to add, remove as necessary, thus keeping us out of that situation, which of course makes me happy, because that's not really where I want to be. I want to be writing the content in the games. Again, content administrators in this case can really easily update feeds associated with different pages on the site. They could update current poll data if they needed to. And of course, they can create new teacher resource elements. This is actually what it looks like if we're creating a game. So you can see it's pretty simple. It's just a web form. Rand could also change their branding as well as creating new channels. The idea there was that beyond the election, we see opportunities to continue this type of platform within the classroom for teaching kids about current events or past events. My thought process was always along the lines that if we've got this portal that's Play the Election portal, we could do the same thing about World War II and make a bunch of news stories about World War II. Now, of course, the opinion prediction game changes a little bit, but it is an effective way to get people to understand what happened, and we can modify the gameplay accordingly so that it still keeps the students interested and allows them to participate in that manner. And then, of course, sales administrators could allow people control access, help support teachers that forget their passwords, which, of course, as we all know, never happens. Everybody remembers their passwords all the time. And troubleshooting and tech support. So really, again, our goal was kind of to offload some of those things just to make it more seamless for us, so we had the ability just to support the platform. So that's kind of an overview of the platform itself. So now let's talk about how we did. We'll start with what went wrong. And this is interesting given everything that I've talked about, because as with all projects, there may or may not be a few bumps in the roads, certainly ours. As much as I would like to say we have the absolute best development team in the world that put this together, the reality is that, there's always a bump in the road and we have to tackle it. So we had a couple things that went wrong, and they all kind of centered around the same kind of issues. So the first thing is that we had an extraordinarily short timeline. So this platform that you're seeing, the Play the Election platform that I've showed you, was developed between March and August of 2012. So we had an extraordinarily short time frame from when we said we were given the go-ahead to building this platform. And within that, we had to build the classroom functionality, worry about the privacy issues, rebrand it, convert it from a Flash-based system to an HTML5-based system, build it so that it could work on iPads, because that was the one request we had, was that it was tablet-enabled, and load test it, deploy it to new servers, educate people how to deploy the servers, how to keep the servers up and running at Rand, and work with them to make sure that the URLs were all intact, and troubleshoot any issues that we had. So if you were to take all of those elements alone, you're looking at something that is a massive project. And we had 3 months to do it, or roughly, when we really started writing the code. So that was a tremendous task on our part to undertake. And because of the short timeline, that led to some issues that I would think we could have handled had we had a little bit of a longer timeline. One being that because we've made the conversion from Flash to HTML, it would have been fantastic to also get it on phones. And it's just something that time didn't allow because we were focusing so much on just getting it to the tablets and accomplishing everything else. The load balancing and handling the number of people that were hitting the servers in that short of a time frame really didn't give us a good opportunity to really test it amongst a big audience. So if you've ever done a deployment of a large scale, I think we got fairly lucky on that, but it did put a lot of stress internally to make sure that was a huge challenge for us. But the development timeline was enough that enabled us to get to where we wanted to be. I will say that the communities and the classroom pieces were probably the most difficult elements to tackle because it really did require us to rework our entire code base. And that was difficult to do in such a short period of time. But we did it, and we're very happy about it. Rand was very supportive when we ran into problems. And we were lucky enough that we did have a contact at Rand that could really help us because it was complicated by the fact that we were trying to host all the content on Rand servers, which we didn't have access to. So this extra technical step really made it difficult for us at times, and we were very happy that Rand was so supportive with the developers to help us get these pieces sorted out quickly. The short timeline, however, also led to a very abbreviated marketing research and effort. I can't understate the importance of what good market research would have done to change how we did this product. And it's nobody's, I mean, it's nobody's real fault, it's just that's the time we had. So it's hard to send out a survey to a bunch of teachers who are out for the summer anyways and expect any meaningful results. So what little data we did get back, we were able to incorporate. With a longer timeline, I think we could have done a lot more in terms of promoting the tool, building a system that did enable teachers to more effectively and easily create their own games, and not only make it, and it can't be much easier, but when I say that, I mean building a system that really guided them through the process, or offered documents that really guided them through the process, because I think that's something that we lacked, despite the intuitive nature. It's still intimidating if you don't have the time to look at a long web form and say, how am I going to do this? So really building those tools would have made it, I think, a bit more effective in promoting teachers and students creating their own games. So those efforts, I think, were really challenging us. And if we had more time, I think that we could have probably produced something that was a bit more effective as a tool. Not to say that this wasn't, because we're very pleased with how it came out. So with that said, what did go right for us? Like, what were the key elements that we were really happy about? Well, the platform was a huge success. We know that because we have all the metrics that show us that. We managed to build a solid platform that worked across every browser and tablets. We didn't officially support Android tablets. We probably would have. That goes back to the timing issue. We did support iOS tablets because that was actually a requirement of the project. Had we had the time, and frankly, there's not that much difference because it's all HTML5 and web-enabled content. There's not that much different. I would have felt a lot better if we had had the time, however, to test it across a wide range of Android devices. And again, the phone elements. I would have loved to have been able to have this on these smaller phones, but time and money seems to control everything in this case. One of the things that we did do that I think was probably one of the best decisions we made in the development process of building this was to hire a third-party vendor to review our code, to look at our architecture, and to do what tests they could to show us where we could improve our performance. And that was actually incredibly helpful. One of the things I did leave out, as occasionally occurs with the developers in the what went wrong section, part of the architecture piece that we ran into was not that the architecture was bad, but one of our core developers ended up getting another job with another company and left the day we launched, which was always a what's went wrong idea. But that is what it is. It's okay. I mean, it worked out. But the third-party vendor really helped us isolate some pieces that really changed the performance of the application. And it's things that we just, when you're so involved with a project that you're looking at it every day, there are things you don't see. So we were thrilled to have that opportunity, and that did eat a bit of our budget, but it was worth it, because in the end, we never had a load balance issue, we never had servers crash, we never had slow performance. Everything performed flawlessly. So that was something that I can say really worked right, and that I'm very proud of. In the end, using our core platform and understanding how it worked, we were able to provide very simple tools that allowed people to build very effective games very quickly. And we know that because we actually didn't get a lot of support requests, even for passwords. I think we had 3 or 4 emails saying, hey, I can't find my password. And so I think that says something about how we designed the system. We did spend a lot of time doing user testing and understanding and having people work with it that weren't familiar with the system, so they gave us feedback that enabled us to tailor everything so that anybody who was not familiar with the system could easily log in, find what they were looking for, do what they wanted to do, and move on. So I'm very happy about that in terms of what went right about our system. The turnout was really good. We had over 2,400 classrooms created. That's globally. The users were a little funny. What we found was that at the end of the day, we had, I think, about, I think it was around 8,000 registered users. But when you do the math, that doesn't really equate to how many classrooms were created. And so when we dug a little deeper, what we found is that some classrooms were created but had no students. So we did a little investigation, and what we found is that teachers were creating the classrooms and then just running it as part of the class rather than having students create their own accounts. So by our estimation, our actual user count, that is eyes on screens, was somewhere in the 20 to 25,000 users. Either way, that's a lot of users to be hammering a server at any time, and we were very happy that it worked very well. So we're very happy that we had such a big turnout. We had a lot of positive comments about the system and how easy it was to use and how it worked. We were very, very pleased with that, and these were unsolicited. We didn't ask anybody for this. These are actually all things that we just found by searching the web, comments on our system. So we're happy because we really believe that we've built an interactive system that really did help students learn about the election process. And we're happy because we were able to give the tools to the teachers at no cost. And that's a big deal to me, and that's a big deal to us at ImpactGames, because that's kind of in line with what our mission statement is, trying to help people learn through games. Finally, I think one of the biggest signs of the turnout was that Play the News won Best in Show and Best Games Course at the DevLearn 2012 Demo Fest, which we were extraordinarily proud of. I thought we had a pretty good chance at winning Best Games Course. I didn't even begin to imagine we would win Best of Show. So we're extraordinarily proud of this, and we are really honored to have been part of this, and really happy that Rand McNally offered to support us and help us make this vision really come true. So with that, looking at the time, I will be happy to field either here or offline, and I will also leave my name and information up there if you want to email me. And I thank you all for coming and listening to me, and I hope that I was able to at least give you some little piece of knowledge today. So thank you very much. questions? Sir.
In the sort of like the background piece of mini games, where you have the initial screen with the different selections to learn more, can you describe sort of the thought process behind having that all in one screen versus like sort of stepping through each phase of that?
Yeah, well, the design process, again, was to make a very simple game that was very quick to get through, and we wanted it to be as interactive as possible with these simple elements. I think by spreading it out, we were kind of discouraging people from going through it piece to piece because they could easily skip through it, whereas looking at it all at once, it allowed them to say, okay, well, this is interesting to me, this is interesting to me, and it didn't force them through gameplay. If they didn't want to look at it, they could just go on and go their way. So for us, that's about giving the user the choice. If they don't want to play and they have to play, then they can just go quickly. But otherwise, they can sit there and read all the pieces.
I just ask because it seems like a struggle in educational things in particular, like learning design is always not giving people all these options.
Yeah, well, so I will tell you this, my background is in e-learning. I started in this industry in 1996, 95, 96, and I started working for an airline. And one of the things that I've been really against, because it is now 2013, and frankly, most of the e-learning content that we see is probably less exciting than watching a video. And I find it really difficult to understand how here we are 20-some years later and that's occurred. And a lot of it centers around just this next button concept, right? Okay, we've read this, now we're going to click the next button. We've read this, now we're going to click that. I like to think that learners are a little bit more evolved than that. So giving them the option to do what they want to do and understand what they want to understand in this case, in the game case, made a little bit more sense. And that was kind of that was the way we solved it. Sir?
You had mentioned a little bit about the difference between gameplay and gamification.
Yes.
How much is that influencing your design choices that you're making with the things as you move forward? Like as you learn from this game, there's a big trend in gamification now. When I talk to companies, they're all very interested in it.
Yeah.
Which I always think is different than gameplay.
Yeah, gamification is very interesting to me because the true definition of gamification is using game elements within your content to make it more interactive and engaging. This is a game. This is not gamification. This is a game. It's got all the elements of a game. That's what it is. It's not content and courseware. For us, if we're trying to, if we're asked to do something in the world of gamification, we're not building a game. We're taking what we know about game mechanics and adding it to courseware so that it does become more interactive. And I think within the industry, in fact, I know within the industry, there's a huge gap of understanding what gamification is and implementing it, because most people who think they understand gamification are actually just building a game. And for us, with that understanding, as we approach different concepts and different pieces, we typically tell people, well, no, that's not what you want. You want a game. You're not looking for gamification. You're looking for a game. Gamification to me is, the great example is airline miles, okay? That's gamification. It's a point system that's giving you a reward for participating. But it's not a game. It's just that part of the game. I don't think people understand that. And so what we're trying to do is, well, we're building games. But for our projects, I think as we move forward, we're trying to at least make an effort to educate people what the differences are. And I think I was just talking to somebody today who was telling me about a study that's coming up that's the difference between what is gamification and looking at the study. It's not gamification they're talking about, it's games. And I think that just makes things a lot more difficult. And really what starts occurring, particularly in the timelines, 3 months to turn a timeline, to turn a game around is so quick. I think people misunderstand what kind of design development, what the process is in building a game. It is not something that occurs in 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of testing. And I think the problem with games and gamification is that with the confusion of the two, people have this expectation that they're going to build something in 2 weeks for $5,000 and it's going to be the magic bullet for their training program. And it's not. It's not. It's going to frustrate your users because, frankly, you haven't probably taken the time to understand if they even want to play games or if they even care about that. So now they're forced into something that takes them 45 minutes to complete versus 5. And it's, that's my rant. Wait, there's one more question. I have one more. I wish I could use the mic so I could run around here like Phil Donahue. That'd be so much more fun for me.
I was curious how large or small your development team was.
5 people. Well, let's see. 2 developers, 1 front-end developer, 1 artist, 1 project manager. And a lot of late nights and beer and pizza. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate you coming.